I'm going to shock the world and you by saying that I'm going to fess up to something that I think I was a little bit wrong about. Okay, so that's coming up in a little bit. And then I'm going to nevertheless make a new prediction.
How much revenue have you brought in so far just from tariffs, Secretary?
So last month it averaged just over 30 billion, and as of last night, midnight, the tariffs went up. I think we're going to be heading towards 50 billion a month in tariff revenue that no one's talked about except for the president. So think about 50 billion a month, and that's where we are now. And then you're going to get the semiconductors, you're going to get pharmaceuticals, you're going to get all sorts of additional tariff money coming in. And as the president says, this could continue to head towards and ultimately reach $1 trillion.
Wow, those are some big numbers being thrown around there. And we're certainly going to return to that dollar figure. But bear in mind that today, Trump once again jacked up the tariff rates on more than 90 countries. And that produces an outcome where the average US tariff rate is now at its highest point in nearly a century. So those numbers are high. Right there, you saw Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick talking about how he expects that soon tariffs will bring in $50 billion in monthly revenue, even before the semiconductor stuff. And that's a really high number. And also, you don't generally see this on the news very often. Very rarely do politicians come out and brag about how much they're going to tax their voters. It's a bold strategy, but he's going with it. We'll return to his claim about the dollar figure there. But first, here's a map of where tariffs have been jacked up even more. And you can see in the orange, there's a new higher rate. In the yellow, there are upcoming deadlines, like in Mexico, where the deadline was not going to be delayed until it was delayed the day after Trump said that. China as well. And in the blue, you have the deals that Trump made, the 90 deals in 90 days, which worked out to something like 5 or so deals across more than 100 days. And so some of these increased tariffs are very significant. So Brazil got an extra 50% because Donald Trump doesn't like that his buddy Bolsonaro is being prosecuted. And so he's using American trade policy as a tool to meddle in the judicial system of a foreign country. You have some rates where it's not that much higher than what's considered the baseline of 10%. So for instance, in Japan and South Korea, the EU, that's at 15%. Places like Taiwan and Vietnam are at 20%. But the important thing to know is that there is nowhere on the entirety of the Earth's surface where there's not a tariff that is higher than it was before Donald Trump. And so no matter where Americans buy things from, we will be paying more. 10% in some places, 50, 100% higher in other places. And right now on average, it's at 18.6%. That is the highest it's been since 1933. Generally, it's somewhere around 2 to 3%. And so Donald Trump has times 9'd that on average. And you saw Howard Lutnick there trying to pitch this as a good thing. Money is going to be flowing into the US government's coffers from all these tariffs. And Donald Trump is trying to make the same case. He's very excited about this, saying reciprocal tariffs take effect at midnight tonight. Of course, they're not reciprocal tariffs. They're just new tariffs he's putting on. They're not in response to other tariffs. That's not what that word means. And he says they've been taking advantage of us. And by that, he means that we have a negative trade balance with many of these countries. And he doesn't understand that we, being a far wealthier country, will naturally have a negative trade balance with poorer countries. He thinks this is a personal insult. It's just a sign of high American spending power. But anyway, he goes on to say 15 minutes later, it's midnight. Billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the United States of America. And the money is flowing. They did collect last month about $30 billion in tariffs. But importantly, the money isn't flowing into the US. Those checks are written by importers in the US. They are going to have to pay the United States government for what they import. And generally they might get some from the corporations in exchange for that, but the corporations are almost certainly going to jack up the prices to make up for that. And if they do, then the price increases are going to be passed on to the American taxpayer. And so in the end, what you effectively have is they have this ever increasing number, 30 billion, 50 billion. But we're paying for that. And it is not just a new tax on the American taxpayer, but it's a regressive tax. The more of your income that you spend, which poorer people do, richer people don't, they save most of their money, you're gonna be paying even more of this. And so at the same time, Cenk, that they cut the taxes on the wealthiest, they're now bragging to their poor voters about how much extra they're taxing them. And I really feel like the Democrats need to figure out a better way to get that across, because it seems like a massive missed opportunity. But what do you make of it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna shock the world and you by saying that I'm gonna fess up to something that I think I was a little bit wrong about. Okay, so that's coming up in a little bit. And then I'm gonna nevertheless make a new prediction. Be fun for everybody. First, all right, so look, these tariffs are totally unsustainable. So they won't last. There's no chance. So I had said that in the past, and I was right about that. He put up 145% tariff on China, or threatened to, and then it lasted about 13 seconds because that's mental. And then he's like, I'm taking it back because I'm getting very strong concessions. China's like, we didn't concede anything. India says now they're going to fight him to the end of time. Obviously Brazil's like 50%. What the hell is this? Okay, and why? Because you have a bromance with the corrupt politician that robbed this country blind. I don't care, how much you love corruption in America and Brazil, but a 50% tariff is like totally random, kills all trade, is insane, right? But if you thought 145% was bad, on August 12th, he's promising a 245% tariff on China. What's the point, right?
Like, once it passes 200, Cenk, I'm not gonna buy as much Chinese stuff. At 199, I'll do it, but.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a sense, right? So let's say you had a 15% tariff on something that costs $1,000. It would go up to 1,000, like if all of it is passed on to you, and the great majority is, right? So it would go up to $1,150. Well, now you're really uncomfortable about buying that thing. You had about $1,000 in your budget, now they're adding 150, that hurts, and you're paying it, right? Okay, now if you had a 245% tariff on that same $1,000 product, it'll be $2,450. And absolutely no one will buy it. Like, of course not. It's insane. Nobody's gonna buy it, right? And so whether it's like, in fact, I might have done the math wrong on that. Might be even more. Anyway, whether it's 2,450 or 3,450 is totally irrelevant, because once you get past a certain barrier, right? I mean, what, max 20%, et cetera? People stop buying it altogether, right? So we have not fully hit the impact of these tariffs at all, because the major tariffs just started today, right? But on top of that, all the companies had been hoarding products, imports, because they knew the tariffs were coming. So they also have some stock ready to go, and they're hoping that they won't run out before Trump changes his mind again, or before it's Taco Tuesday again. And he's like, well, yeah, I can't go 45%. I mean, I meant 2.45%. Right? So it's not totally unsustainable. Been right about that from day one. Absurd, right? One more thing about how much you guys have to pay. On average, this is insane, and goes to John's point. The average, according to Yale Budget Lab, average American is going to have to pay $2,400 more because of these tariffs per year. $2,400. That is an enormous tax on the average American, and a regressive tax. Like, the billionaire doesn't care about the $2,400 at all when he's buying bubble gum and t-shirts and sneakers, right? But $2,400 to the average guy is backbreaking. Remember, 40% of the country can't afford an extra $400 hit. What are they gonna do with an extra $2,400 hit? Okay, so John, did you pay attention to any of that, or were you just looking forward to the part where I admit I got something wrong?
No, I thought you were gonna surprise me. I didn't know you were gonna surprise me with something wrong. You already had my interest, but I forget the rest of that quote. It's been a while since I watched it. What were you wrong about?
Yeah, so I thought the tariffs were largely, not exclusively, because Trump's believed in them for a long, long time, and we showed on tape. He's been talking about him for decades because he's an idiot and thinks that since there was no income tax in the 1890s, because of the tariffs, you could just get rid of the income tax. No, I know all that, but nevertheless, I thought it was largely a trick to say, oh, we're going to get a lot of new revenue, so don't worry about that $4 trillion in extra debt we're going to pile on because of the giant tax cuts, and hence, once the tax cuts had passed, he didn't need that excuse anymore, and he largely dropped the tariff talk. But he didn't. So, okay, you got to own up to things you got wrong. Facts matter, okay? So that was my educated guess, and I told you guys not a fact, but a prediction or speculation or a guess, and that guess was wrong, okay? It turns out that Trump is really mental about tariffs. Like it wasn't largely about the taxes, it was largely about how mental he is. And guys, seriously, he thinks he can get rid of the entire income tax, his own income tax, if he does enough tariffs. It's not the 1890s. You're crazy, dog.
Yeah.
Okay, now, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you're admitting you're wrong, I could listen all day.
I got another prediction coming up in a second.
Okay, well, I will quickly say I hadn't known that you linked those two things as explicitly. I think it's fine for him to be corrupt on the taxes thing and dumb on the trade thing. I think he contains multitudes. But even if, let's say it was designed to do that, and all of the money that we raised did go to paying off the extra debt that he generated, which it definitely wouldn't. Like to give you an idea of how much he just handed the wealthy. So they're saying $50 billion a month. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? A lot of money. That's $600 billion a year. It would still take like 8 years to pay off just the new debt that he decided to give to the wealth. That's a crazy amount that they gave to them. And we would still be paying for that because we're the ones paying the tariffs. And so even if he used it for that purpose, it would be utterly unacceptable. Now, we're of course expecting increasing prices. As you said, there's been some strategies that corporations have used to try to ward it off. And to some extent, they haven't even necessarily had to, because very often the tariffs were announced and then they didn't happen, or they were gonna happen and then it was delayed. I defy anyone to say what the actual tariff rate has been in any given country 2 months ago. But the price increases are happening. And so the latest monthly measure of inflation showed that appliances, clothing, and furnishings have become more expensive in just the past couple of weeks. Walmart, Procter & Gamble, Nike, and Hasbro have already said that they plan to raise retail prices to compensate for their rising tariff bill. And as we know, when companies have an excuse, a big worldwide thing, an excuse to raise prices, they never raise prices as much as they need to. They raise prices as much as they can. And so I fully expect them to pass on as much of this as they can, and probably a little bit more, especially if people are forced over the next year or two to get used to ever increasing prices. Well, then who's to say they're not gonna do an extra 2%, an extra 4%? It's gonna be like the supply chains. People are just used to that sort of thing. And all of this, one would have to imagine politically, is gonna be terrible for the Republicans or whoever is the incumbent party when this is going on, Cenk.
Yeah, and that leads to my prediction. So Trump's gonna crash really hard. I don't wanna say soon, but soonish, right? 2 months, 4 months, definitely by 6 months. So now you have to understand the context. There's other shows that go around saying, that's it, Trump is done, it's over. Okay, he said some word wrong or he did some buffoonish thing. That's it, he's melting down. Now, and we've told you a million times, no, it's not true. I mean, it's wishful thinking, it's fantasy land, it's just to appeal to people who want him to melt down. So why is this one, from my point of view, my prediction, why is this one correct? Okay, and why am I saying it now when I haven't said it before? So number one, he's gonna pull off a little bit of a miracle here of stagflation. So normally what happens is when you have low unemployment, that means the economy's doing well, everybody's employed, but then that'll heat up the economy and you might get high inflation, right? If you can keep employment and inflation down, that's beautiful. And actually we did that for a couple of decades here in America. Since you got, like a lot of folks don't have the perspective of the rest of the world, you don't know how miraculous that is. That's amazing that we could do that, right? But usually those things yo-yo, okay? And so, But in this case, the reason why you'll have higher unemployment and higher inflation is because the tariffs are pushing up prices, so that pushes up inflation. But because corporations now also have less money, they hire less, right? So now you've got less hiring and sometimes firing to make up for the fact that you can't move your products. Right? If you have a 245% tariff on a product, you obviously can't move it. That hurts your bottom line. You fire people, and you certainly don't hire anyone new. So unemployment goes up, but because of the tariffs, inflation also goes up. And that's stagflation. And that's an epic economic disaster. So now that the tariffs have actually started, unless he tacos immediately, right? This is gonna start to do some heavy damage. That's why I say in 2, 4, 6 months, right? Because they gotta run out of the stock that they have, the prices have to go up, and then you're gonna see both of those effects, and then the American people are going to start to panic. So, but not just on that, but also now mix in the fact that Donald Trump has given up tweaking Israel at all and is just fully in bitch mode now. And so if Netanyahu says jump, he says how high, how many Palestinians would you like me to murder, whatever. So he's 100% Israel first now, and over the top in a way that is infuriating MAGA. So he's eating into his base, let alone the independents, right? And then on top of that, you got the Epstein files. And so all of these lead to similar conclusions. A, he's not really for us. I mean, to John's point, so they put a $1.1 trillion tax cut into that bill for just people making over $500,000. 1.1 trillion. So even if all these tariffs, quote unquote, work, they raised 600 billion while creating stagflation and all the other disasters, but they raised 600 billion. That's coming from the average American who's spending $2,400 extra every year. So you have to have 2 years of you guys paying about $2,500 a year in extra regressive taxes, and all of that will then go to the rich. People making above $500,000. Look, you could do marketing and you could do propaganda for a little while, like, oh yeah, no, Israel's not killing anyone in Gaza. It's all lies until we all see the starving children, right? And you could say, oh yeah, the tariffs, they're not gonna create unemployment or inflation, and they're gonna create nirvana and Xanadu, right? And that'll go for a while until reality hits. And when they go to Walmart and prices are much higher, and then their cousin lost his job, it doesn't matter what you BS them with. It doesn't matter what kind of marketing you do. And by the way, if Trump's unsure about that, he should go ask Democratic leadership. Oh, we're gonna pass this or we're gonna pass that. We're not gonna pass anything. We're just messing around with them. The donors told us not to pass anything. And how'd that work out for the Democrats? Reality has a way of catching up with you after a while.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say it's pretty amazing that they're choosing to do this when they just won largely on these issues. Like, it's not even like we criticize Biden for not doing enough coming out of the pandemic to fix the problems, to fix the inflation and all of that. But we know that at least there were exogenous shocks. Trump is totally just choosing to do this. He didn't have to. Nobody was demanding this trade. I mean, maybe some of his voters, I guess, because they understood it as little as him. But he just is choosing to double down on high prices, inflation, the same stuff his base was so angry about, and that enough independents were angry about, that they put him back in power. It seems like the strangest political own goal maybe of our lives. I don't know if I'll ever understand it.
No, I understand it. Just real quick on that, John. Look, it's the donors, period, right? So he says, oh, we're gonna release the Epstein files. And then he gets in, they're like, no, you're not. He's like, oh, no, I'm not. They suck, they don't even exist, right? I'm gonna stand up for America first. And then gets in office, the donors are like, no, you're not, Israel first. He's like, yeah, sorry, I don't know what I was thinking about. Israel first, America third or fourth, right? And on and on and on, right? So the reason why he's doing the exact opposite of what he promised is the same reason why Democrats do the exact opposite of what they promised. The donors, they lie to you to get your vote, and then once they're in office, they're like, I'm not doing any of that. Where's the corporate subsidies? Let's increase those. Happens every time.
It's almost enough to make you think we should try actual economic populism rather than just right-wing identity populism. It's almost enough.
Rebellionpact.com.
These are statistical changes based on this antiquated system, and it's just a a big leap to go to rigged. And then it also, Mr. President, it makes anyone you pick is going to be, critics are going to say, hey, he's picking a guy that's going to give him or a gal that's giving him the numbers that he wants.
CNBC's Joe Kernan really found himself in a difficult position today as he was interviewing Donald Trump and as he was essentially forced to do some corrections of statements that Trump was making. Now, why was that difficult for him to do? He's a huge Trump fan, huge Trump supporter. Typically, he provides cover for anything that Trump does on CNBC, but in this case, he had to correct Trump's statements in regard to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, his decision to fire the commissioner for BLS, and more. So Kiernan seems skeptical of the idea that it would be possible for the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner to rig unemployment numbers. So let's hear what he had to say. Let's hear him make his case and how well Trump responded to that.
Elaine Chao was on yesterday, and I know she was I think she was labor secretary for 8 years under Bush 2, and she was your transportation secretary as well. And she said, the commissioner doesn't really even get involved with the actual minutia of putting all these things together, and there's no way that it could have been that she could have chosen to rig these numbers to make them look bad. Anyone you pick is going to be, critics are going to say, hey, he's picking a guy that's going to give him or a gal that's giving him the numbers that he wants. So it undermines confidence in the system to some extent.
Well, I think when somebody says the commissioner is not involved, I don't want to get into any arguments with anybody. Why should I? She's a very nice woman.
Exactly.
But when they say that that nobody was involved, that it wasn't political, give me a break.
I mean, look, I'm not an expert on the inner workings of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but really the BLS commissioner isn't involved in the numbers. I don't know if I buy that, to be quite frank. But also, I know that Trump fired her for political reasons because he didn't like the revisions of the jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and he is in the wrong for doing that.
I believe she needs a PhD for that position. That sounds amazing, but the point there is that that person has to have impeccable credentials, but there's a reason for that. So no, as far as all the articles I've ever read about it, she doesn't produce the numbers, but do they present the numbers to her, the statisticians, et cetera, who did it, and does she then authorize it? Yes, that's her job, and that's why she needs to be an expert in this field. It can't be just somebody off the street, because you need to understand how those numbers work. So she might not prepare them, but she has responsibility for them. Okay, so look, I'm a little bit surprised that he did a fact check on Trump.
Yeah, he got annoyed about it at some point, by the way. It seemed like there was a producer off camera giving him the fact checks, and he got annoyed and said, "Oh, I got to fact check you. I usually didn't have to do this with Biden," which I thought was interesting.
You see that? Okay. But on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that one CNBC does care about, okay? So the election, they're like, oh yeah, you stole it, or you're claiming it was stolen and you're an obvious liar. Oh, okay, I'll do a fact check, God damn it, right?
Is it gonna hurt the markets?
Right,
No.
Yeah, exactly, right? So they don't really care about it. But for Bureau of Labor Statistics, they need to be able to, the markets need to be able to rely on actual numbers. If you bring in a political figure there and they're just making up numbers to make the president look good, then the market, the markets are in the dark then, and they don't have the proper information to make investments, and they hate that, right? Yeah. So you can tell in CNBC's reaction, the political correctness is coming from Trump, not from the head of BLS.
So look, Trump did keep pushing this idea that the revised jobs reports and the latest jobs report pertaining to what happened with our economy in July were essentially rigged in Biden's favor, which the data does say otherwise. We're gonna get to that in just a minute, but before we do, let's hear more from Trump, especially as he complains about how everything is unfair and rigged against him. Take a look.
Just days before the election, they put out numbers that it was like the country was on fire. It was doing so well. And then they did a revision about 2 weeks later, and the revision was down by almost 900,000 jobs. You remember that?
Those were benchmark numbers, though, Mr. President. That happens. They do that. They do that twice a year, and it reconciles the monthly figures with like the overall numbers. And it was a big number. And obviously,
the numbers were rigged. The numbers were rigged. Biden wasn't doing well. He was doing poorly. They announced these phenomenal numbers 2 days before the election, and a little bit before that. Always these great numbers. After I won the election, I said too big to rig. But after I won the election, then they announced a downward number, in other words, to bring them back to reality. And I said, wow, supposing I would have lost, I would have blamed that, and people would have said I was a conspiracy theorist.
Not true. Okay, so we looked into this. I want to give you the actual numbers so you know that the Bureau of Labor Statistics wasn't cooking the books, cooking the numbers to make Biden look bad and Biden look good and Trump look bad. So a month before the election, the BLS jobs announcement on October 4th showed growth of 254,000 jobs for September. But the BLS announcement on November 1st, right before the election, showed weak growth of just 12,000 jobs in October.
And they adjusted the earlier months down.
Yeah.
So like if you're running for president and on November 1st, they released that information, that is very bad news for you, right? So if this was all a giant conspiracy to help Biden, that is the very last thing you would do on November 1st, right before the election.
BLS, by the way, stated at the time that strike activity, hurricanes hitting the US, that kind of stuff led to lower employment. BLS also said the August and September figures were revised down by 112,000. So conservatives pounced on the bad numbers. And I'm sure Trump remembers that because this was all happening in the lead up to the election. A Fox News headline called the report dismal and said it gives Trump last minute political ammunition to fire at Harris. The Trump campaign at the time said the jobs report was a catastrophe that showed how Harris broke our economy. And ironically, a month after the election, the October figure was actually revised upward. So complete opposite of what Trump is claiming here.
So look, he said there, if I had lost, I would have said this happened and they would have called me a conspiracy theorist. No, that's because you are a conspiracy theorist. You came up with a conspiracy theory, even though the facts actually help you.
Yeah.
And including in what he's crying about. He's such a.
Okay, it gets better.
Okay, hold on, just real quick. What he's crying about now is, the job numbers were low this month and they revised the last 2 months downward. But that means they had to revise them because they had overly inflated them in the last 2 months while you were president, just in time for you to pass your tax cuts for the rich and your tariffs, etc. Right? Conveniently. So if there was a conspiracy, in both occasions, it was to help you. But I don't believe there was a conspiracy, because I'm not a loon like Donald Trump, which I'll get back to.
Now, my favorite part of this entire debacle with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and their jobs report is that lower employment numbers gives Trump the perfect argument that he needs to convince Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. And for whatever reason, it seems like he's unable to connect the dots. And Kiernan mentions this in the context of this interview. Let's see how Trump responded to it.
Which number do you believe at this point? Because if you noticed, suddenly the chances of what you've wanted for months and argued for months, the chances of a rate cut soared because of these numbers. Do you not believe the current numbers because they're playing right into what you want the Fed and Jay Powell to do? They're not horrible, as you said, but perhaps with the tariffs, some businesses delayed some spending. Some consumers may have been less certain about the future. So maybe we're seeing a slight slowdown in labor, but you're going to get exactly what you want based on these numbers. Which ones do you believe? Do you not believe the revised numbers either?
It's not what I want. I don't want that. I wanted it a year ago. I wanted it a long time ago. Jay Powell is highly political, and I think, I call him too late. Jerome, too late, Powell.
Oh my God, that's it, that's my commentary. Cenk, back to you.
Okay, so two things here. Guys, there is one thing that was disturbing that we mentioned in yesterday's show, which is that Apparently, Wall Street got some of these numbers 30 minutes before the rest of the public did. So if there is any conspiracy at all, see, the job numbers going up and down happens all the time. That is not abnormal. That happens under Republicans and Democrats, right? Wall Street getting the numbers first never happens. Okay, so that was a giant irregularity, right? So if you were looking, if I was the president, I'd say, I want to know why that happened. Is it somebody inside the Bureau of Labor Statistics that leaked it for financial purposes? Because that would be massive insider trading, huge problem, right? And then if you say to me, hey, the numbers were greatly inflated right as they were trying to pass the tax cuts for the rich and for corporations, well, then I would say, wait, are those two things connected? Normally they go up and down, but with this giant irregularity, now I'm a little bit worried that someone's trying to cook the books to pass the legislation that helps Wall Street, right? But that's Trump's bill. And so again, if he's saying that happened, that would be totally counterproductive to what he wants, which then leads to the final point and the most important point here. So look, the folks on the left already know this, and a big percentage of independents know this. The MAGA guys or whoever, Trump voters, you're the last man standing on this, okay? Last of the Mohicans. Trump is a buffoon, okay? I know you don't believe that. I know you think he's a hero, or some of you do, and some of you are beginning to realize Epstein files, subservience to Israel, giant deficits, that maybe he's not the guy you thought he was, right? But he doesn't understand simple concepts, and he refuses to do just a tiny bit of hard work. It's not even that hard, just a tiny bit of homework to understand things. If the job numbers are low, that helps your cause in cutting interest rates, which stimulates the economy. That's what Donald Trump wants. But the job numbers come in and he goes, oh, I don't like it, it's a job. Because why? Because it affected his ego and he's a dumbass.
Well, okay, I think the problem with Trump, and I see this problem play out in almost every political issue he's involved in, his paranoia of people trying to destroy him politically like blinds him to reality, right?
No, I get it, but
it just does. He thinks everyone is out to get him, but it's like, you're president, you're the president, okay? No one's out to get you. Democrats tried, they failed on multiple occasions, but at this point, you want lower interest rates. It's very obvious that now it's gonna happen in September. But like, he's not connecting the dots.
No, sorry. I'm gonna revise what I said earlier. A lot of Democrats don't understand this either. And this is gonna be like, by the end of Trump's term, this is gonna be another redemption where people are gonna be like, oh, it turns out all the times I theorized about his strategy, there was no strategy. Like when he has strategy, I tell you, like when he went to go figure out what do the voters want, credit to where credit is due. This is back in 2015 and earlier, before he ran for president, and he tested his messages. Hey, do I go pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant, and decided on any. So that's strategy, credit where credit is due. But on stuff like this, he's dumb. He doesn't understand that the job numbers being low goes to what he wants, lower interest rates. He doesn't understand that. If you're a plumber, you might not understand that because you didn't get a degree in economics. But if you're the president and you want lower interest rates, when the bad job numbers come out, you should immediately think, ooh, silver lining. I don't love that it's bad job numbers, but that's gonna help me pressure Powell. But he doesn't understand super simple concepts like that because he's dumb and never does homework and has no strategy other than Trump, bad job numbers are low, I don't like it. Okay, Fed, job numbers are high, so the Fed's not going to lower rates. Job numbers good, Fed bad, evil. He's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. So I know if you're some portion of MAGA or you're some portion of Democrats who think he's a secret, incredible strategist, you won't believe me until at some point you go, oh right, he said to disinfect it inside your body, Clorox, to cure COVID. He's a moron. He's a moron of epic proportions. Here's the hurricane. I drew it with a magic marker. He's a moron. He doesn't understand simple economic concepts. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.